Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I brought all of my meditation, well, not all of them, but I brought the three that I typically, it's falling out of my hand, the three that I typically bring with me, the two Melody Beatty books, and then I also brought A Year of Positive Thinking by Cindy Spiegel. So let's get into this one, A Year of Positive Thinking, Daily Inspiration, Wisdom, and Courage, and see what it has to say to us. I believe it's April 10th. April 10th, be willing to be surprised. We must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Joseph Campbell. If you were able to control each detail, you might feel safer. But the magic is often in the unknown. The beauty is in the surprises, and the grace is in the unexpected moments. Let go, surrender, ease up, sit back, and simply allow the magic to happen, and it will. This is such a great meditation for me. I love this meditation so much. It's a good reminder for me, you know, as an addict and an alcoholic and also somebody that suffers from social anxiety. Control is something to me that has been very important at points of my life, especially at points that I didn't feel like I had a lot of control in my life. And I think also growing up in an alcoholic home and being a child of an alcoholic where I didn't feel like I had a lot of control of the outcome, then I would try to find where I did have control, if that makes sense. And I'm sure there are many people out there that relate to that statement. One of the things that I have tried to do over time is learn how to not have control of situations and learn how to go into them with my safety mechanisms in place, but also going into places like easing up and surrendering to just the moment and allowing myself to really enjoy the moment, if that makes sense. You know, for example, like one of the things that my best friend loves to do is she loves to put me in the passenger seat of her car and go, okay, I'm going to drive around this time and you're not going to be in control of the driving. And she loves to do that, but I feel safe, with my best friend. So I know nothing bad is going to happen with her, you know what I mean? I hope nothing bad is going to happen with her as far as like safety, in an automobile. But I trust her as far as like where we're going and things like that, if that makes sense. So, today in my life, I really only allow people in my life that I do feel safe with, if that makes sense. I think that we don't talk about the ability to surrender in moments that we feel safe often enough. So many of us grew up in environments or have had experiences in our past where we did not feel safe, whether that was a relationship or whether that was a home environment, or even where that was a work environment or a group of friends where we didn't feel safe. We didn't feel safe to be ourselves. We didn't feel safe to just physically live. We didn't feel safe to, say what we felt like we needed to say or stand up for what we needed to stand up for. But today we don't have to live that way. Today we can surround ourselves with people who we feel safe with, who, make me feel safe always when I'm with them, if that makes sense. Like I don't like that word to me is very important for me today. I have to be surrounded by people that I feel that have my best interest as far as my life is, and I have theirs as well in mind. Like I feel that the people that I have in my life today are people that I would trust with my life, and I think they would trust me with theirs as well. And I think that that's really, really important, So then, when you have that, the need to try to control outcomes and situations is not so great as it was maybe before, because we've worked on some of those things. In certain recovery basic texts, it talks about, the idea of the director and the player. And like, if we could direct everything, wouldn't life be grand? If everybody would just do as we wanted them to do, and it's this idea that is so hilarious because it's so me at certain points in my life where I'm like, if everybody would just do, we've all been there at one moment or another, right? Where it's like, if everybody would just act and do what I wanted them to do, then the world would work in a great way, But the reality is, that's not how the world works, number one. Number two, I don't have it figured out, I don't know what's best. I don't know what's best in a lot of situations. And so sometimes it's important for me to take the lead from somebody else. Sometimes it's important for me to be part of a group and listen to what somebody else is saying and trust that process, trust that journey. That's hard. That's really hard for us sometimes. I have really tried in the last couple of years to just surrender to life. I haven't told this story over here for a while, so I'll tell it. But when my mom was in the hospital, the last night, I had asked a dear friend of mine, I said, will you hold her hand and say the Serenity Prayer? And so she said out loud, and I said, yeah, out loud. And so she held my mom's hand and she said the Serenity Prayer. And then I said, well, she started to say the Serenity Prayer. And I said, will you say the third step prayer? And the third step prayer is about surrendering. And so she said the third step prayer over my mom. And as she said it, my mom flatlined. And it was this moment for me that was just, it was so profound that she just, like, I share this a lot in meetings, actually, because it really is very meaningful to me. But it was like this moment, like, of truly surrendering, you know, truly, like, anyway. So when I got home or came to my mom's house that night, because I was collecting some of her things and getting some things together, and underneath her bed, she kept her 12-step literature, and then she also kept her Bible. And I was looking through her 12-step literature, her basic text, and my mom had written, like, in the sidelines, you know, because she had been in, like, book studies and things. I mean, her book was, like, used. It was, like, you know, dog-eared, and this was, you know, over there. But the only part that was highlighted was the third step prayer. And I was like, wow, like, this is magical, you know? And that ability for us to surrender in life and not just give up and say, oh, well, I throw my hands up in the air, I give up. But that ability to give in to what is happening, whatever you're going through right now in your life, whatever hardship you're going through, you know, if you're going through grief because somebody's passed away in your life, or, you know, if you're like, I know it's going to sound like a strange idea, but let me kind of throw some different ideas together. Whether you're a newlywed, okay, and that should be joyous, but that's also hard, you know? Or, you know, I'm trying to think of, like, friends in my life, what they're going through, you know? Or if you're going through a divorce, likewise, you know? Or if you're starting a new job, or living in a new town, or a new apartment, or starting college, or whatever it is, all these new experiences that you have, right, that you've never had before, you know, like, or you're a new mom or dad, you know, like, that's one as well. Instead of, or, you know, like, what's something else? I'm trying to think of something else that, you know, it could be. You're new in recovery. If you're new in recovery, you know, instead of being resistant to every new experience that you're having and saying, like, I don't know what to do with this, and I don't know what to do with that, and I don't know what to do with this, maybe just surrender into the unknowing, you know, surrendering into I have no clue, and I'm going to learn this as I go, you know. I remember I had a conversation with my dad years ago. And it was actually, my dad and I rarely get into arguments, like almost never. And I remember I was a little, like, we got a little heated because I said to him, it was something that I didn't know that I needed to know as an adult, right? And I said, well, why didn't you ever teach me this? And he said, who do you think taught me that? He said, this is stuff that you learn as you go, you know? And, here, I'll tell you, it's very funny. It was homeowners insurance that we were talking about. And so yeah, I didn't know about homeowners insurance. I didn't know how to get it, what to do. I didn't know any of that stuff, you know? My dad said, who do you think taught me? And he said, my dad calls me Pete. And he said, you know, Pete, he said, life is trial and error. You know, it's about trying things, and you learn some things you do are right and some things you do aren't right. It's about asking for help. It's about, and not being ashamed to ask for help, you know, and saying, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing in this situation. Do you have any suggestions? Like, or this doesn't feel right to me, or this feels new, like, and I don't know how to get to a point of that, you know? But I think that we have this need in our world to always be right, to always, you know, be in control, to always have all the answers. And the reality is we just don't. We just don't. You know? And that's why I do often in my life with friends of mine that are older, I'll, like, when I'm going through something, I'll say that I know that they've gone through, because it's kind of like an age thing. I'll say, like, when you were my age, or when you went through a similar situation, like, how did you go through this, you know? Like, when Alex and I were going through marriage counseling, I asked so many of my friends that were in marriage counseling, what helped you the most? Like, what did you do in that setting that really made the difference? And I mean, so many of my friends were like, when I went in there, I was there. Like, I was like, we're getting our money's worth. We're going to sit down here. I was honest. I talked about my feelings. I talked about my emotions. I was unafraid when I walked in there, and it was like a fair, safe environment. And hearing that from other people really, really, really helped me, you know? Equally when I was going through my mom's death from my mom's, or grief from my mom's death, when I was going through that, you know, and I would ask friends of mine, like, how do you go through this? I had a friend of mine that even joked about being part of the Dead Moms Club, which I really didn't like the wording of that, but, like, I hadn't gone through that, you know? Now, my other friend, who was she didn't call it that, but her mom had passed away like a year and a half before mine did. She was so beneficial in walking me through just the planning of the funeral and the funeral process and the viewing and how to handle it. And that if I didn't want to stand there anymore, I didn't have to, you know, and what I could handle and what I couldn't handle. And she was there for me through the whole thing. It She was phenomenal. And then, in early sobriety, it was the same thing. Finding people that had what I wanted and doing what they did or asking them what they did, I tell kind of this funny joke about this. So I don't know that I've ever shared this in a video before. If I have, it's been a while. My battery died right as I was about to tell this funny story. So anyway, when you're in early sobriety, they tell you, or maybe not just early sobriety, but all through sobriety, but yes, mostly in early sobriety, they tell you, find somebody that has what you want and do what they do. And so when I was in early sobriety, I was between my first and my second sponsor. And there was this guy that would come to my meetings. I think he came like a couple weeks in a row. And he was, oh my God, he was so sexy. And he had a swagger in his walk, and he would walk in and I'd be like, oh my God, he is so fine, right? And so I saw him get into his car one night and he had this like amazing sports car. And I was like, he's going to be my sponsor. Like, oh my God, he is the answer to all of my problems, right? Like, I mean, the sexy guy that drives a sexy sports car. He has what I want. So, but that's not what they mean. They don't mean that at all, okay? And as it turned out, that's not my sponsor today. So anyway, and today my sponsor, she has everything that I want. She really, really does. She has wisdom in her life and she takes accountability for her actions. She inventories and evaluates her life. She's kind, she's generous, she's giving, she's present, which is one of the things I'm working on right now. She's always present and she's spontaneous. I could call her up right now and be like, hey, you want to go out to dinner? And she'd be like, sure, what time do you want to go? And that's what I love about her because I'm trying to be more like that. I'm trying to less have to have things in control. This is like me talking about the list, I don't know when that was, last week or sometime. Me getting away from feeling so committed to having to follow this list and me being more spontaneous and enjoying life and just being like, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. While at the same time, still feeling safe, still feeling like, I think the difference is feeling like I'm in control of my life, but not needing to control the life of others at the same time. Does that make sense? I think that's what my goal is right now, and still feeling not like in control of every aspect of my life, but there's a difference between feeling completely out of control and, like, have you ever had nightmares before? I used to have these nightmares, and I remember like talking to a psychiatrist one time about it. That was like a friend of mine, and I said, what do these nightmares mean? He goes, you feel like your life is completely out of control. This is like years ago when I first got sober. But one of the nightmares was that I used to have nightmares over and over and over again that I would be on a roller coaster. I don't ride roller coasters. I have epilepsy, so that's my excuse, but I don't like roller coasters anyway. But that I would be on a roller coaster and it would just like never stop. And I could always get to the top and I would like go down and I just like panicked nightmares, right? And the other nightmare that I would have was that I would take the wrong exit on the interstate and the only way off was to go down this long, and like I would just have to let go of my car and be like this. And I had those for a long time. And what's interesting is when I had those like nightmares, those were towards, I've had them once in a blue moon, since then. But those were like, I would have them, over and over and over again when I first got sober those first couple years. And it was at moments that I was really trying to control things that I had no business trying to control in my life anyway. You know what I mean? So I think it's really about enjoying life, being more spontaneous, floating with the river of life. I know it's so hard to do that, but that's one thing that I'm really practicing in my life. And if there are those of you out there that struggle with the same thing, it's like every day, let go of something. It's not about just, like I said, throwing your hands up and being like, whatever, I guess I'll just give in. It's not about that, right? It's about finding safe ways to do that and surrendering into what is going on so that you can enjoy your life more. So that was a great meditation. I need to be reminded of that because that's one of the big things that I'm working on right now. And I love you guys and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.